the moment Claire collapsed in the tall golden grass. Her body bruised and her children crying in silence. Earth didn't notice, but he did. Jake didn't mean to find them. He was just scavenging another broken human trying to survive a broken world, but what he saw wasn't a threat. It wasn't just another alien hiding from patrol drones. It was a mother starving, trembling, clinging to two silent, blue-skinned children. Her words cut deeper than any wound he'd ever known. Take me, use me, but please just feed my kids. She didn't beg for herself. She never asked for mercy. She offered everything she had left: her dignity, her body, her soul, for the chance her children might see tomorrow. What kind of man could walk away from that? This isn't just a story of survival. It's a story of sacrifice, forbidden tenderness, and a quiet war between duty and desire. Because when the world turns its back on the helpless, sometimes all it takes is one human heart to change everything. Intro: 600 words. They came from the stars, but not as conquerors. Not with weapons or threats, not with glowing emblems or mighty fleets. They came as refugees, Claire among them, fleeing a war Earth had no part in. Their ships were fragile, their people scattered. The crash left twisted metal across farmlands, and skies streaked with smoke, and no one came to help. Claire survived. But survival meant dirt in her wounds, rust on her skin, and two children crying from hunger. Their father was gone, burned in the fall. She was alone, walking barefoot across hostile fields, hunted by drones and hated by locals. Every day was a gamble. Every step could have been the last. Then came the moment that shattered her pride. Her children hadn't eaten in days. Their lips cracked, their eyes sunken. She tried chewing roots, feeding them paste from the emergency pack, but it was gone. Her arms couldn't carry them anymore. But she carried them anyway. Then she saw him, a man, rough, tired, clearly a scavenger. But he had a pack, and she saw the glint of food wrappers sticking out. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just whispered hoarsely, "You can do what you want to me. Just feed them." Jake froze. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't someone who saved people. He was just trying to make it through the next day without starving himself. But something in her eyes, not fear, not anger, just fierce, unyielding love, made him lower his weapon. He gave her water. He watched as she poured it not into her mouth, but into her children's hands. They licked it off like wild animals, trembling. He gave them food. She didn't touch it until they finished every bite. He asked her name. She said Claire. That's all. And just like that, his life started changing. Not with passion, not with romance, not yet. But with the slow, aching realization that this woman, this alien, had more humanity than anyone he'd met in years. He didn't want to use her. He wanted to save her, but the world wouldn't allow that. Not when aliens were hunted. Not when compassion came at a cost. This story isn't fiction. Not to them. Because when pain meets love, when hunger meets hope, and when one woman offers her soul to save her children, the only real question is, will someone answer or walk away? The moment Claire collapsed in the tall golden grass, her body bruised and her children crying in silence. Earth didn't notice, but he did. Jake didn't mean to find them. He was just scavenging another broken human trying to survive a broken world. But what he saw wasn't a threat. It wasn't just another alien hiding from patrol drones. It was a mother starving, trembling, clinging to two silent, blue-skinned children. Her words cut deeper than any wound he'd ever known. Take me, use me, but please just feed my kids. She didn't beg for herself. She never asked for mercy. She offered everything she had left: her dignity, her body, her soul, for the chance her children might see tomorrow. What kind of man could walk away from that? This isn't just a story of survival. It's a story of sacrifice, forbidden tenderness, and a quiet war between duty and desire. Because when the world turns its back on the helpless, sometimes all it takes is one human heart to change everything. They came from the stars, but not as conquerors, not with weapons or threats, not with glowing emblems or mighty fleets. They came as refugees, Claire among them, fleeing a war Earth had no part in. Their ships were fragile, their people scattered. The crash left twisted metal across farmlands and skies streaked with smoke. And no one came to help. Claire survived, but survival meant dirt in her wounds, rust on her skin, and two children crying from hunger. Their father was gone, burned in the fall. She was alone, walking barefoot across hostile fields, hunted by drones and hated by locals. Every day was a gamble. Every step could have been the last. Then came the moment that shattered her pride. Her children hadn't eaten in 2 days. Their lips cracked, their eyes sunken. She tried chewing roots, feeding them paste from the emergency pack, but it was gone. Her arms couldn't carry them anymore. But she carried them anyway. Then she saw him, a man, rough, tired, clearly a scavenger. But he had a pack, and she saw the glint of food wrappers sticking out. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just whispered hoarsely, "You can do what you want to me. Just feed them." Jake froze. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't someone Who saved people? He was just trying to make it through the next day without starving himself. But something in her eyes, not fear, not anger, just fierce. Unyielding love made him lower his weapon. He gave her water. He watched as she poured it not into her mouth, but into her children's hands. They licked it off like wild animals, trembling. He gave them food. She didn't touch it until they finished every bite. He asked her name. She said Claire. That's all. And just like that, his life started changing. Not with passion, not with romance, not yet. But with the slow, aching realization that this woman, this alien, had more humanity than anyone he'd met in years. He didn't want to use her. He wanted to save her, but the world wouldn't allow that. Not when aliens were hunted, not when compassion came at a cost. This story isn't fiction. Not to them. Because when pain meets love, when hunger meets hope, and when one woman offers her soul to save her children, the only real question is, will someone answer or walk away? I wasn't looking for anyone that day. I was just trying to make it out of Sector 12 before nightfall. The clouds hung low and heavy over the wheat field, casting shadows that crawled across the tall grass. I'd seen wreckage before, burned out escape pods, broken alien gear, even the occasional torn suit half buried in mud. But nothing prepared me for her. She was sitting there in the field, knees folded, arms wrapped tight around to small bodies. Kids, all three of them were covered in dirt, blood, and something I couldn't name. Their skin shimmered faint blue under the storm light. Alien, no doubt about it. I almost turned away. You learn to stay uninvolved out here. It's easier to survive when you don't care. But then I saw her eyes, and those kids, silent, not crying, not blinking, just staring like they'd forgotten what warmth felt like. I stepped closer. I shouldn't have. Her gaze lifted sharp and glassy, half-conscious, and for a moment, she looked straight through me like I wasn't even real. Then, in the faintest whisper that somehow still cut through the wind, she said, take me. Use me, but please feed them. My breath caught. I'd seen a lot of desperation in my time. But this wasn't bargaining. It wasn't seduction. It was surrender, not for herself, for them, her children. Her voice didn't crack, didn't shake. It was steady, resigned. Like she'd already made peace with whatever came next. I dropped to my knees, fumbled into my pack. I had half a protein bar left. I snapped it in three, placed each piece gently in her dirt-caked hand. She didn't eat. She broke the bar again with her fingers, tiny halves for the children. They devoured it without blinking. She watched, empty-eyed. Like feeding them was the only thing keeping her anchored to this planet. Water? I asked. Finally finding my voice, she nodded, slow. I offered my bottle. She poured it carefully into her palm and raised it to their mouths. Her hands shook, not from fear, from weakness. When the kids fell asleep, curled into her lap, I finally took a closer look. She was wounded, deep gash on her thigh. Maybe from the crash or from running through the metal debris that littered the sector. Her dress, or whatever was left of it, was torn, stained, clinging to her in wet patches from the field's morning dew. Her hair looked like wine-tossed wires tangled with mud and dried blood. I looked past her and saw it, the tail end of a downed alien transport. Twisted steel, burned plating, no sign of life, no other survivors. Just her, and those kids. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She hadn't asked for kindness, only survival for them. Not even a name, not even a story, just a deal she thought I'd want. I'm not here to hurt you, I said. Her eyes flicked toward me, still guarded, but less wild now. You're human, she whispered. They warned us about your kind. I nodded, probably for good reason. She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, but you fed them. I don't know what made me stay, maybe guilt, maybe something else, but I did stay. I dug out a thermal blanket from my satchel and wrapped it around her kids. She didn't protest, just nodded once and closed her eyes. The rain started a few minutes later, light at first, then pounding against the field like falling glass. I moved my tarp over the three of them, covering their bodies from the worst of it. And there I sat, beside her, soaking wet, silent. Waiting for answers to questions I didn't even know how to ask. Morning came without color. The storm clouds hung heavy, casting a dull silver over the wheat. I barely slept, just sat there, back aching, legs stiff, watching her breathe. The kids were curled like kittens beneath her arms, their tiny chests rising slowly under the makeshift cover. She opened her eyes, not startled, just awake. There was no gratitude in her face, no relief. Only the emptiness of someone who'd run out of prayers a long time ago. I reached into my pouch again, ration biscuit, crumbly and bland. She didn't flinch this time. I handed it over. She broke it in three again, not even a glance toward her own hunger. I'm Jake, I said quietly. She hesitated. Claire, it was the first word she spoke that didn't sound like a farewell. I looked down at her leg. The wound was worse than I'd realized, jagged, red, swollen. Infection was coming if it hadn't already taken root. You need treatment. Her Jaw clenched. We're not allowed in the clinics. I nodded slowly. Of course not. Aliens weren't citizens, not welcome in camps, not welcome anywhere. I have some supplies. Not much, but enough to clean it. Her voice lowered, and, in return? I paused. What did she think I wanted? You offered yourself yesterday, I said. Is that what you think this is about? Her fingers tightened around the biscuit fragments. It's not about what I think, she whispered. It's about what keeps them breathing. That broke something in me. I wasn't a saint. I wasn't even good. I'd taken things in the past: food, shelter, credit without asking, but this wasn't survival. This was surrender dressed as a transaction. You don't owe me anything, I said, and meant it. She looked away. The wind brushed her hair against her bruised face. She winced, but didn't make a sound. I pulled out my medkit. Torn gauze, old antibiotic gel, a single pain strip, not much but better than nothing. As I leaned down to clean the gash on her thigh, she didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched me like she couldn't decide if I was real. I had a partner, she murmured. He was strong, brave. He didn't make it. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. He told me, if anything happened, keep the children hidden. If they're found, people won't see them as children, just threats. I nodded. They're not threats to me. She finally met my eyes. You're the first one who said that. I bound her wound carefully, slow, deliberate. When I was done, I handed her the last pain strip. She didn't take it, just broke it in half. Gave one to each of the kids. Not for her, never for her. You're hurting, I said. Not as much as they would be, she replied. The sun tried to break through the clouds, failed. I looked at the wreckage in the distance: twisted hull, melted engines. Nothing salvageable, not even shade. We need shelter, I said. There's a fuel outpost about a mile north, abandoned, might have a roof. She didn't respond. So I added, I'll carry them. Her lip trembled, not from fear, from something closer to disbelief. You would do that for us? I stood, lifted the smaller child first, then motioned for her to take the older one's hand. I'm not doing it for you, I said, glancing at the horizon. I'm doing it because no one else will. We started walking, step by step through high grass and soft mud. Her bare feet left faint blueprints behind us. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, determined, exhausted, unyielding. She didn't ask where I came from. I didn't ask what planet she lost. It didn't matter. All that mattered was this quiet, sacred pact we'd made without saying a word. I would walk. She would hope. I would carry. She would endure. And together we'd keep those kids alive. The outpost looked like it hadn't seen life in years. Rust coated the beams. Solar panels shattered like forgotten glass bones. Vines had claimed the corners of the structure, curling up walls like nature was trying to hide the decay, but it was dry. It had a roof, and more importantly, it had a door we could close. I pushed it open slowly. No drones, no traps, just the hollow echo of wind against steel. Claire stood in the doorway, her hair tangled and damp, children clinging to her legs. She said nothing, but her shoulders dropped the second she crossed the threshold, like her body finally understood it was allowed to rest. I found a corner with enough insulation to dull the cold. I laid down the tarp, helped her ease the kids onto it. They were asleep in seconds. Claire sat beside them, back against the wall, arms cradling them instinctively. Her eyes didn't close. She stayed alert, like the silence might betray us. I knelt beside a shattered crate and struck the emergency flint I always kept hidden. A flicker of heat, a spark, then soft firelight. The glow lit her features, blue skin streaked with dried blood and exhaustion. But beneath all that was something fierce, something unshakable. You were a leader, weren't you? I asked. Her lips barely moved. I was a gardener. That surprised me. I cultivated biopollen. She gestured softly toward the pendant around her neck. He handled harvest runs. We were peaceful until the skies turned red and everything was ash. A long silence. I've never met a gardener who looked so ready to fight. Her gaze met mine, not cold, not warm, just real. When no one else is left to protect what matters, you either die with them or stand in the way. I didn't know what to say to that, so I nodded. I understood more than I wanted to admit. I scavenged through old drawers, overturned crates, found a pack of dried roots, brittle but edible. I handed her a piece. She hesitated. You're safe now, I said. Eat. She broke it in half. The smaller portion went to the sleeping child beside her. Even now, instinct over need. You always put them first, I said quietly. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I leaned back against the opposite wall. The fire crackled softly between us. I lost someone too, I said. Her head tilted. Just a little, wife, years ago. Illness we couldn't afford to treat. Back then, I thought the world was cruel. Now, I see it was just warming up. Claire listened without interruption. Not pity, just presence. I started running jobs, smuggling, salvage, whatever paid. But every time I saw someone hungry, I saw her. I swallowed and I kept walking. Claire stared at me for a long while, then said, "But you didn't this time." Double quotes. "No, I didn't." Something about her, about the way she never begged for herself, hit deeper than guilt ever had. "You know," I muttered, "you're the only alien I've met who doesn't speak in riddles or hierarchy codes." She gave a faint smirk. "First one I'd seen. We're not all priests or commanders." Clearly, silence settled again, but not heavy, not sharp, just still. Then she surprised me. She pulled something from the folds of her torn dress, a seed, encased in a strange translucent shell, glowing faintly. "I kept one," she whispered. "From the garden." I leaned forward. "What does it do?" "If planted in dead soil and sung to each day, it might live." "Might," she nodded. "No promises, just possibility." I stared at that tiny thing, so small, so fragile, but she carried it like it was sacred. And then I realized she wasn't just surviving. She was hoping. Even now, even here, we stayed like that until the fire dimmed and the wind outside quieted. Not strangers, not allies. Something else. Something unnamed. The days blurred together inside that rusted shelter. Each morning, I scavenged what I could: filters from old water units, patches from heat blankets, dried moss from beneath old power panels. Every night, Claire tucked the children against her body, whispering in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. She didn't speak much when the sun was up, but when the moonlight spilled in through the cracked ceiling, something changed. One night, I returned to find her outside the outpost, sitting beneath the leaning satellite dish, legs folded, eyes skyward. "You shouldn't be out here," I said gently, settling beside her. She didn't flinch. "I used to sit like this in the garden dome. The stars looked different then, but still made me feel small." "They still do," I murmured. She turned her face toward me, calm but tired. "Jake, why are you helping us?" It wasn't the first time I'd asked myself that question. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was a buried sense of duty clawing its way back. Maybe I saw the echoes of a life I lost, of what I could have had. But tonight, I gave her the truth. "Because you never once asked for help, and yet, you deserved it more than anyone I've ever met." Claire lowered her head. Her voice was fragile. "You could have claimed me that day. No one would have stopped you. No one would have cared." I met her eyes, steady. "But you would have, and that was enough." For a long time, she said nothing, just stared at me like I'd broken some ancient code. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the seed again. She placed it gently in my palm. "It responds to warmth, not sun." Heart. I stared at it, this pulsing tiny orb of possibility, and felt something crack open inside me. A future. Not just escape, not just survival, but maybe rebuilding. That night, I found a cracked flower pot buried behind the outpost, filled it with the driest patch of soil I could find. I buried the seed, careful not to bruise it. Claire sang to it under her breath, soft, humming notes that didn't need translation. We placed it near the fire, not because we believed it would grow, but because hope doesn't need proof, just belief. On the fourth night, Claire reached for my hand. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, intentional. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was sure. "I used to think affection was a luxury," she whispered. "For those who had time for soft things, not for women like me, women who lost everything." I squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes the ones who've lost everything are the ones who need it most." She leaned into my shoulder, the smell of ash in her hair, the faint tremble in her breath, the weight of her head against me like a trust I didn't deserve. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. But we didn't let go. Later that night, as the wind howled beyond the walls, Claire pressed her lips to my ear and whispered, "You don't make me feel used, you make me feel seen." It undid me. All the pain I'd buried, all the mistakes I'd made, all the walls I built, they shattered in that single sentence. Not because she offered her body, but because she offered her truth. I watched her curl back into the blankets. Children nestled against her, and I realized something dangerous. I didn't just want to protect her. I was falling in love with her. And in this world where people sold kindness, where decency had a price, falling in love with someone who couldn't afford to be loved, that was the biggest risk of all. We heard the engines before we saw them, a low rumble, slicing through morning quiet like the sky itself was growling. Claire froze mid-sentence. She was teaching her youngest how to pronounce a word I scrawled in the dirt. My stomach sank. "Stay inside," I said sharply. "Don't speak, don't move." She didn't argue. She just gathered the children and backed into the shadows of the shelter. I stepped outside. 3 recon bikes. Military. Not just any squad Earth enforcement patrol. The kind that hunted undocumented survivors. They didn't ask questions. They didn't show mercy. Aliens were liabilities, ghosts to be erased quietly. One officer dismounted. Scanning the area, he spotted me immediately. "You alone out here?" he asked, one hand resting on his holster. I nodded. "Just scavenging." His gaze drifted past me, toward the bent door frame. I saw it in his eyes, suspicion, pattern recognition. He was trained to read body language. Temperature fluctuations, heartbeat rates. He stepped forward. Mind if we check your shelter? Every instinct screamed to lie, to fight, to run, but Claire and the kids were behind me. So I said calmly, there's nothing in there but rust and regrets. He didn't buy it. He pushed past me. The others followed. I blocked the doorway. You'll have to kill me first. The words were out before I realized I meant them. They laughed. A gun cocked behind my head. That can be arranged. Then the sound that changed everything, a small voice behind me. Mama, the smallest one, awake, scared. The officers raised their weapons. I didn't think, I acted. Spun, grabbed the nearest rifle, slammed it upward as it fired. A blast hit the ceiling. I took a blow to the ribs hard but didn't fall. Claire darted forward, shielding the children with her body. Don't hurt them, she cried. Please. I'll go. I roared, not as a fighter, but as a man who refused to lose what he didn't know he needed until it was almost ripped away. Adrenaline took over. My fists found faces. I took two down before the third fired. Pain ripped through my shoulder. I collapsed. Claire screamed. The world tilted. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, she was over me, blood on her cheek, not hers. The third officer lay unconscious nearby. Claire holding the discharged rifle like it weighed more than her whole body. You're bleeding, she whispered. I'm not dead, I muttered. She laughed, a soft, broken sound, more real than anything I'd ever heard. I thought I lost you, she whispered, brushing dirt from my face. You almost did. Her hand trembled as she touched my jaw. I can't lose anyone else. You won't. I sat up, gritting through the pain. The kids stared at me, wide-eyed. I smiled, despite everything. We're okay, I said. We're together. We buried the soldiers under the weeds, took their supplies, burned their records. That night, we lit a fire bigger than any before, not for warmth, for celebration. Claire brought out the pot, the one holding her seed. It had begun to split. A faint green shoot peeked from the soil. It was alive. Against all odds, it was growing. Just possibility, she whispered, tears trailing down her cheek, and it chose to bloom. I looked at her, this alien woman who'd once offered herself to save her children, who never once cried for her own pain, who taught me that love isn't something you claim, it's something you earn. She leaned in, pressed her forehead against mine. You never took anything from me, she said. I never had to, I replied. And when we finally kissed, it wasn't out of need. It was because we'd found something beautiful in the ashes. Something worth staying for, something worth fighting for, something worth growing together.